All right, we are back again with our nourishment as well. This is to, kind of like a let's nourish the body and mind in a nice, palatable, easy to digest way. Applesauce. I have pear for those who are wondering, and if you would like to sponsor. And what do you have?
Banana, apple, and carrot.
Oh, there we go. And this is Joyann. That's myself. And I do have a background in speech, arts, and media. And that is something that has always been, I guess, a little thing that has always kind of made my soul sing. There's like a little baby photo with me, playing with a radio and having like a make believe like mic in my hand. And this is my fantastic company, Joyann Co. And that is Jason. And Jason is someone who has an amazing and varied past and career and trajectory. So for me, it kind of starts in high school, where I was lucky enough to meet Jason. And Jason to me was always somebody who I knew kind of would make it. But I thought it would be in more of the arts. I did think that. So then what was that for you? What was that pivot for you?
Yes, I did grow up performing, like Joyann said, in the arts, and then made a decision to shift gears in my early 20s. Essentially, while I was in the arts, I started to do work in the area of casting, so casting for shows and productions. And then I got into executive search, which I find is casting just in a different light. That is essentially looking for individuals, talent, that are going to audition, interview, for a particular position and then end up on a leadership team, the cast, and then do the show running the company. So if you can make those parallels, you can see why I'm now an executive search consultant and I work with leaders and coach them.
That's incredible. I actually didn't know that you were in casting.
Mm-hmm.
You probably made sure not to tell us, because I know there are some friends who would have harassed you and been like, because I don't know if you had friends like that in high school who were like, oh my goodness, we need to get into Stephanie Gorin and blah, 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 blah. And I'd be like, girl, I don't know if that's how it works.
Well, I'll just say I was not a casting director in terms of being someone who was prolific, but in the evolution of my career in the arts, when I started to write shows, put on productions, etc., you are involved in casting as well.
Yeah, like looking for who fits the role best.
Exactly.
So then you might have a lot more experience in this in terms of the variety of roles that you've helped put people in. Because for me, you are definitely an expert in leadership roles and executive search and things like that. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know it also started way back in you casting like productions and things like that. What do you prefer?
Well, again, because I should probably not have said casting director or anything like that, because I was not, right? This was just me, again, for some shows that I wrote, involved in trying to find people for them. So the world that I know is the 20 years that I've been in, executive search, helping to find leaders. I'll always be someone who is attached to the arts, but I would say the preference is the work that I do right now. Yeah.
That's amazing. And looking at it, oh my goodness, 20 years. What? So, because I remember thinking to myself, when you see certain people doing a job for more than a decade, you're like, how do you do that? So for you, how then have you managed to put yourself into a position where you have been able to kind of have that stability in a career?
That is actually a really, really good question, especially in today's world.
We're looking at that stability.
Yeah, there's a lot of people looking for stability. And then even still, when some people have the stability, how do they sustain themselves in terms of wanting to continue to do the work that they're doing? So sustain themselves in the work. I would point to a couple of things. So one thing I would say about the work that I do is it's very project-based. So I work with an organization to help them find a really strong leader to help them in a particular portfolio of the overall company. And then there's a bit of an exit, right? Where the project's done, you found the person, they're in the role, you help to onboard them, and then you move on to the next thing. And so that variety is very stimulating. The world iteratively changes, and so the needs of organizations change with the changes of the world. And so that's another thing that makes it quite fresh. The fact that what I was doing 5 years ago is going to look very different in terms of what the world demands of leaders today. And I would also say the evolution in terms of the different train stops that I've been on my career has made it interesting for me as well. So obviously started off more junior, and then progressively started to get more complex roles. Changed companies to become with a much bigger company. And then after making partner at one of the firms that I was at, decided to go out on my own and start my own executive search firm. And so there's so much learning that comes from all of that as well. And so the way that I wrap this up is I feel that a big thing that sustains people in their jobs is the learning and is feeling like you are constantly stretching what you know. And sometimes that comes from different assignments that you're given, etc. Sometimes that comes from different roles that you're given. Sometimes that comes from the fact that the world iteratively changes, as I mentioned before, and you have to actually stay on top of that change in order to deliver your work. So people are in positions that they feel there's not much learning that they're being afforded. It's really kind of repetitive and commonplace what they're up to. Over time, they're probably going to feel like there's not enough newness, and human beings really value something that feels novel and new.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and I want to disagree with you when you were like, oh, it wasn't like casting director. But for me, I think it was really amazing because at one point I know you were like teaching dance and then you were also having recitals and you were, like you said, you were casting and seeing who would do the head of the dance, like who would be in what dance role. And then you were also doing your own productions like plays and things like that.
Yeah.
What then would be, I mean, did you feel like you had accomplished everything you wanted to in that sphere, or were you just like, ain't nothing going on but the rent? What was the main impetus for you to like shift away from your artistic roots in a sense?
Oh, such a great question because yes, I often say to, people that I do coach that our lives in terms of our careers are partly intention and then partly divine intervention.
Mm-hmm.
So the intention part is what we're planning. The divine intervention is things happen. We have to respond to it.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, the path that we're traveling is going to look a little bit different in terms of veering off. So I was performing and doing things within the art and culture space for, I would say, like the first 20 years of life. So I started young and continued on till about that age. And then I opened up my own company that was in the art space, Upstage Productions, a company that Joyann knows very well as well because she did do some work at Upstage. And there was a client that ended up not being a good client at all. And so essentially, there were some subcontractors that I had come onto our project, and the client was supposed to be paying towards the subcontractors as well. I paid the subcontractors, and when it was time to actually get the money from the client bailed, if I can be colloquial, and didn't pay it. So there was a lot of money that I was out because just being someone that's ethical and has integrity, of course, I'm going to pay people for their time, and then I was expecting to be reimbursed, and I wasn't. I was young, didn't necessarily have the checks and balances, I would say, in place to make sure that money was got. And then by the time I'm looking into maybe some legal pieces, etc., it just ends up not being worth it. So the reason why I bring that up is because there was a money issue at the time when I had to actually go into my pockets that weren't deep, go into some credit debt and things of that nature to pay others. And then I just started to think to myself, do I even want to do anything right now that is entrepreneurial, that's my own business? Maybe I need to actually just open myself up to something different and actually, get a paycheck from a different company. And so when I opened myself up to that, executive search came calling. And I didn't think that it would be something that I'd be interested in. But then when I was able to liken it to, again, casting, I was like, wait a minute, it's actually not far from arts and culture and some of the work that I've been doing. So I went into it, never looked back. And that's what actually started the path in terms of starting to do this work. And so that's where the divine intervention came into place because it was a time where I was thinking to myself, I'm going to need to make money. And I don't know if I have it in me right now to actually deal with the round the clock running your own business. Lo and behold, I'm running my own business again. So,
yes.
After a few decades of actually working with some different organizations, here I am. And it's a better time because, in my 40s, I'm able to actually speak to the experiences that I feel I needed to have under my belt to be able to really run one.
Yeah, that's amazing because like I was just thinking of like the parallels because there's another friend of mine of ours that I also really admire a lot who I think kind of did like very similar things to you where they went back and then now are in a executive role like yourself. So I was just like, wow, how did you guys both, look at your situation and say to yourself, no, it's not working and I want to be where I want to be. So I think then I'm sure that there are a lot of people who would be listening and watching who are kind of more in my position where we're looking at where you are and what you've accomplished. So you were always able to kind of like make these really intelligent through lines where you were like, hey, wait a minute. When I'm casting my dance recital, when I'm casting my plays, when I'm casting the works that I've created, I'm looking for the right person for that role. And hey, executive search and filling jobs, you're doing the same thing with a candidate. You're just looking who is the best person for this role. So how then were you able to do that? Because I think and also don't forget Jason is also this amazing person who also came and spoke to my students twice. So both you and I have been lucky enough in this sense that we've been able to wear many different hats in the realm of career and marketing ourselves. And for me, someone who loves speaking, broadcasting, journalism, I'm like, okay, also education works into that as well too. And because you are also someone who's so talented, you are also able to come and speak to my students. So for them, it was interesting because I think a lot of times, a lot of other cultures don't require you to do a lot of making those connections, right? Because I didn't realize how deep it was. Like, for example, where my family's from, there's something called like entrance exams, like CXEs is what they're called in the Caribbean. And then I made the connection that my students from Colombia and Brazil also have those types of exams where you're not asked what you want to do or what you're good at. You take your courses and it starts as young as 12 and 11. And I was like, what? 12, 13 is when you have to figure out what you're going to do for your career? My brain exploded because in Canada, North America, our culture, where we've grown up, not where our parents have grown up, it's very different. So at 12, 13, you have to start taking courses that will allow you to get into a certain state, college, or university, and then that's where you get your career. So that's all foreign to me. But my students were like, yes, teacher, I did well on my exams, and so I became an accountant. I did well on this exam, and so then I was able to take law classes, and now I'm a lawyer in my country. And I'm just like, huh? So I think for them, it was hard for them to look at their soft skills and make the connections of what else they're very good at. Because clearly, if I'm teaching people who in Brazil and Colombia were accountants and lawyers, they're good at many, many things, but they lack that thing that you have. What do you think that is that you have that I wish I could have pulled out of you and given to all of my students? Like being able to look at, you know what I mean? Like being able to cast that wide net because I personally am so intrigued by people like yourself who are able to be like, okay, so I've done this. All right, working with that client was not the most, it was a little detrimental to my wallet. So how do I avoid that? And then how do I hit the ground running and continue to move forward and move onward rather than getting stuck and not using all of my skills? Because my students who obviously you met them, you were impressed by them, but I think a lot of the times they're like me. We read the job description and we go, uh-oh, I don't have that. Uh-oh, I don't have this. Uh-oh, I don't have that. I can't apply for this job. But I have a sneaking suspicion that you and my other friend, who I'm very also impressed by, were like, okay, well, I don't have that, so what do I need to get that? And then how do I go on from there? So how do I pull that out of you and give it to myself and to our listeners and my past students?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for people to just ask themselves the question, what is it that's causing me to feel like it's not me that they're wanting to hear from? Right? and really just sit with that. But then also in follow up, say, what is it that they need that I know that I perhaps might be the only person that can bring,
Oh my God.
right? So you're asking yourself the question of why am I actually feeling like I'm not the person, and sitting with that, and then flipping it to the other side of the coin and saying, there are things that I know that I can bring that they don't even know they need almost.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really where you should continue to focus. I will say that when people are putting together, job descriptions, and when they're thinking about what they need for a role, they are doing it from their own perspective and their own lens, right? So, for example, you might have someone in HR who is putting together a job description and may not even know everything that there is to know about the role they're putting the job description for. So, for example, let's say someone in HR is putting together a job description for someone in finance. Maybe they don't know exactly everything that the person is supposed to do in order to be successful. And so you, as someone who might actually have strengths in that particular vertical, you might not necessarily have everything that you see on the paper, but you'll have some things that didn't make it to paper, right? There should be some things that you yourself know is also needed. And you should make a case around that so that they can then say, ooh, I'm learning from the applicant. I'm learning about how to think about this role through the lens of someone who would actually animate it and do it, right? So there's a lot of power in that. There's a lot of authority in that. And so for myself, I know what my limitations are, right? And I think that it's really important for people to be able to express what those things are as well if you want to be successful. But I also know what my strengths are, and I think that people need to spend more time there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And share that, whether it's on paper or when you're speaking to folks, etc. And really just show up in a way that exudes a particular level of confidence. Maybe we're not going to be the most confident in every aspect, but we should have enough confidence to actually inspire trust and inspire confidence in the next individual listening.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So even if we are, intimidated by the job description, remember all the things that we have as multifaceted human beings that we would be bringing to the job or the role that they haven't necessarily asked for.
Yeah.
So again, in layman's terms, when I'm teaching, I would tell my students, like, it's your soft skills, the things you've done without even thinking about since high school, or in those cases, Brazil and Colombia, where they are making you do exams at such a young age, that you've been doing and working on since you were like 11, so that you could take those courses, so that you could write that exam at 16. Like, thanks, shout out to my cousin. She passed all of her 10 courses at 16. So that means that she can go on to state college, and then she can go on to be a lawyer. And I'm just like, this is incredible. Like, you're so young to already know exactly what career you're going to be going towards. Like, that's to me incredible. And for me, it's in my brain. I think it's like someone like you. So do you feel like you were at a young age, like, obviously you were more interested in the arts at the beginning, but did you always kind of know that you would be successful?
I think so.
You know what I mean? I'm just like, oh,
yeah,
I want that for everyone. That's beautiful. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, I did. I was always someone who just strived for achievement. And there were, things that I was able to realize throughout my youth and young adulthood, etc., that were markers of achievement actually happening. So, in grade school, whether it was being like valedictorian or, running certain clubs or whatever in the school, like for the student body type of scenarios, and honor rolls and things like that, right? That you kind of use to say, okay, I'm actually, seeing like my efforts result in some of these things that end up becoming markers. And I was never a shy individual, and I think that can actually help folks if you're okay to actually be in conversations with all sorts of people, because kind of advertise what you are about and what you want in terms of any sort of dynamic that might take shape. And so that opens up doors, and that's what ended up happening. And I was always someone that was okay to, put myself out there. And so, an example is when I performed in Mamma Mia with Merge Productions for 2 years.
I remember that.
Yeah, and I was actually in high school while I started performing in the show. And not too many people would put themselves out there and say, I'm going to audition for this, big Broadway show that's in Toronto for 2 years, and see what comes of that. And I did. And, I really pushed to get into these types of spaces, et cetera, et cetera. And you have to be willing to do those types of things to have doors open. And so, just as a takeaway for folks listening, that has to kind of be like a constant. Like, you can't stop trying to get doors to open.
Mm-hmm.
That actually has to be like your MO in terms of how you just literally live life every day. It's like, what am I doing today in terms of opening a door? What am I doing today to meet someone that I didn't meet before? So just example, this past week, I was invited to go to this event where Deborah Cox, we love Deborah Cox, right?
How did you get here? Hey. Nobody's supposed to be here. Nobody's supposed to be here.
Yeah, pretty much, right?
Oh my God.
Yeah, you can see a Joyann. I can just digress.
Oh
but I had an opportunity to actually meet her backstage, so to speak, and took photo ops with her, etc. And so, these types of things happen, again, when you're putting yourself in spaces where you're looking for opportunities, or looking for doors to open, and cultivating that and actually making it as a part of your daily actions. Yeah. And that's something that I didn't necessarily know I was doing when I was a child, but I developed that muscle in terms of being able to just do it, and it started to come instinctually and naturally.
Where do you think that comes from? Because in my brain, I just thought to myself, oh my goodness, I feel like you're one of the people who, before everybody was like, you should journal, you should do affirmations. I feel like you were a person who did affirmations.
I did journaling. Yeah, when I was a child, I literally, in the summertime, would write in my journal like the books that I was going to read over the summer. The amount of journaling I would do, the types of activities I wanted to do over the summer, the different, spaces I wanted to join. Like, it was a constant thing.
You're calling it into existence. That's amazing.
All the time. So yeah, that has been a theme of my life. Like, I wake up, I do to-do lists, I look at them, I say, how much do I want to actually, bring in, like, revenue wise for my company? Mm-hmm. Like, there's all these things that I'm constantly thinking about doing and then putting it into action. After you write it out, it's like, now what do I have to do to make it happen?
Okay. All right. So for someone who, like myself, who unfortunately is like kind of like the antithesis of you, where I'm like, what? Journaling? What? Like, goals and setting and like to-do lists? How then do we start? Like, so we have to catch up. So you started when you were quite young, mm-hmm. and then you didn't lose it, because like I know a lot of us, like when I was like in, oh gosh, I think it was like middle school, like when we were like 11, 12, 13, they were trying to teach us to do like binder reminders using our agendas and making schedules. And I fell off, right? But you are someone who started even younger, mm-hmm. and you kept it up. Mm-hmm. So then does that mean tomorrow morning at what time Jason will start doing all this stuff?
I will be up at 8 a.m. on a Saturday morning.
On a Saturday morning? Ooh, so no sleeping in. So
I wake up every morning.
So when you hear people saying like these amazing, like, what's the word? Like, tips and habits of highly successful people, mm-hmm. no sleeping in.
During the weekday, I will wake up sometime between like 5 to 7 a.m., like in that window. And then, Saturday, I wake up at 8 a.m. And part of the reason why I wake up at 8 a.m. is because I have like a regimen like on my Saturday mornings. And so it causes me to wake up every Saturday at 8 a.m. as opposed to being tempted to sleep in. Mm-hmm. Sunday, I'll sleep in a little bit more, but I try not to sleep in past 9.
Okay. So he's up at like at least 8 a.m. Mm-hmm. So weekdays, it's 5 to 7 a.m. Mm-hmm. Like, when I was younger, this would have made me start to cry. Nowadays, I'm like, child, it just happens naturally.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for me, because I'm like, oh, girl, you don't have to be anywhere, I stay in the bed. And they're like, oh, well, girl. Now I'm like, okay, no, he's correct. We have to get going. Also because I feel like for me, I'm a person who has more energy in the morning.
Right.
So if I did, want to go to the gym, it has to be in the morning. Mm-hmm. So then you're up at 5 a.m. on Monday to Friday.
Yeah.
What's your next step?
So when I'm up, I'm always really focused on, when I actually, after eating, etc., I'm always focused on kind of like to-do listing the day. Mm-hmm. So really trying to make sure that I'm focused on what it is I want to try to get through in the day. Okay. So I'll, write out all my different clients, and I'll write out the to-dos for each of those clients. I also have different sections. So I write down business development, what I want to do in terms of to-do list for business development. I have an area as well where I'll just call it more personal miscellaneous. So what do I need to get done in terms of things that are not on the professional
Where did Deborah
side.
Cox come in? I'm like, how did he meet Deborah Cox? Okay, where was she on the list? Right. We're and today I'm going to be rubbing elbows with Canadian royalty in terms of music, singing, and talent. Also was Galinda in The Wiz on Broadway. So let me and and the guest judge on Canada's Drag Race. You know what I mean? I will now be meeting with Deborah Cox. Where was that on the
that wasn't a to-do list in terms of let me make that happen and manifest that. That just had to do with the fact that in terms of networks that I keep, etc. When you expose yourself, you end up getting invited to different things, right? So that was something that was more coming with the territory in that regard. But I'll do the to-do list, and then I'll start to action on things. And there are times where I'll actually allocate a certain amount of time for every item that I want to get done, so that I'm really being accountable to getting it done, as opposed to not having some things that actually keep me focused.
Okay, so then, let's go back. Let's underline that point, because I think that's where a lot of people like myself is where we start to kind of, because I have so many lists. Oh my goodness. I wish I journaled like I used to, but I still have a lot of lists where I'm like, I'd like to do this, and I'm researching this, and I want to do this, and Underline that part again. What is, you said a timeline.
Yes.
So keeping yourself accountable.
Or like a time, almost like a timer, not even like a timeline. It takes many different iterations. So if there's, let's say, reports and things that I need to get done, I might say, for this report, I'm going to actually have a half an hour that's going towards putting into that. So maybe I'll block the time on my calendar. So see half an hour. Sometimes I actually just use my phone and put on the actual timer. And I'll just commit to actually getting something done in that half an hour, because there can be all sorts of distractions or things that want to pull you away. And so I say, I'm on the clock. I have a deadline. I've manufactured the deadline. I forced this deadline upon myself. And sometimes too, what that does is it keeps me out of perfectionist mode, because I am someone who is very much a perfectionist. And so in that half an hour, I'll think to myself, I need to actually get a draft out. I need to actually make sure that I've put something together in that half an hour that lets me know that I've actually made progress. And then I can just move on to the next thing, and maybe that will still show up on the to-do list for the next day. And it might be okay, finalize it, because I drafted it one day and I'll finalize it the next day. But then there's other things as well, right? Sometimes on the personal realm, let's say I'm just doing some cleaning, I might actually turn on a set list. And if it's 15-minute set list of a couple different songs, the goal is to actually get the cleaning done in that 15-minute window. So I'm jamming to the songs, and I'm twirling and picking things up and putting things away. And then I'm okay, I had a good time listening to the set list. And in 15 minutes, I've done a lot of cleaning, and I feel that is now off my to-do list. So I gamify it. I, put certain pressures on it, etc., just so I'm constantly getting to some results. And
that is such a good idea. You know what the sad thing is that when I was in school, I was taught these things, because they were hey, you there with the perfectionist ADHD, you need to be making a timer. You should time yourself, and make sure you put in your breaks, and you use a timer. And I was always I don't even do enough work. I don't deserve a break. But in so saying that, I still never did any of the tasks, because then I was so overwhelmed because I wasn't taking breaks. And then, funnily enough, one of my students also was identifying themselves as someone with ADHD was like, teacher, I would like to present on Pomodoro technique. And I was like, what is this technique? And then they presented it to class and I'm like, oh my goodness. I think in school, teachers, professors were trying to do an outreach program with me, Joyann, and be like, hey, you need to do Pomodoro technique. Oh my goodness, I have the way to show you. You need to do this. And I was just like, oh, I'm so overwhelmed. I can't do it. Because this now goes back to another question I have for you.
Right.
What is your definition of your type of perfectionism? Because unfortunately, someone told me that I'm a perfectionist. And I was like, how dare you? Perfectionists do it correctly. And she just looked at me like, yeah, that's why you don't do anything, because you think you're not doing it good enough because you're a perfectionist. It was like, oh shoot.
You know what? Like,
So
I
what
love
is your
that question
definition?
too. Like, I'll talk about it like in terms of like how it lands for Jason, right?
Yes.
Like perfectionism at the intersection of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a perfectionist in that I will cause myself not to make progress because I'm so stuck on wanting it to be perfect. I don't mean that at all, right? People that work for me at my company, they will see that I'm someone who always likes to like keep things moving. I am a perfectionist in the end result, right? So the process,
I want to be that type.
Yeah, the process isn't a perfectionist process. It's actually messy, and we're gonna like have all sorts of things that happen during it, so that we can actually make that progress. But then there does come a time where you got to cross the T's and dot the I's and make sure that everything is like good to go. People can come over to my place and they'll see like, okay, it looks like this is someone who kind of has some perfectionist qualities because pillows are fluffed and things look like it's magazine
It always looks
ready.
perfect. It's the perfectionism I wish I had. I literally have the one where I literally get stuck and frozen.
Right. So then you
because
don't.
I'm like, I can never accomplish this, so I don't want to. Again, it goes back to I don't want food poisoning, so I'll do nothing. I'll starve. I want nothing. I need to get yours.
Got it.
But you're like, the end result would be perfect.
Yeah.
But I understand you. As soon as you said it, you said, but I understand the process towards that end result will be messy.
And it's great that you bring that up because as you like parlay that onto the conversations in terms of like people's careers and try to actually make traction, etc. There are times where people don't start because they're trying to actually like have everything in place. Yeah. And I am someone who will just start and not know where the hell things are going.
Amazing.
But we'll just say, as we get to any barrier or bump in the road, we're going to adjust, we're going to make some pivots, and we're going to change. And we're going to see more clearly what we need to do because it's never clear what you need to do at the beginning. You just got to start. And
oh my God.
The starting is the hardest part for a lot of people, the scariest part. Yeah. I mean, there was something that you kind of brought up earlier, and I think this is a good time to kind of bring it in. And it's probably going to be hard for some people to hear me say some of these things, but I think it's necessary just to at least open people's minds up. And it's the question of like, what does someone want, right? Mm-hmm. And so someone can actually say like, I want to like, be successful in my career in this particular way. But if they're not being in action, then is that really what they want? So an example, even when you say like, sometimes I think you mentioned like not getting up or not being motivated to get up. Maybe in that moment, it's kind of like, I want to be in my own space and not be social, right? I want to avoid the anxiety of being around people.
Yeah, because I'm not ready.
Right? So it's that, I mean, one can have like big aspirations from what they want, but if there's certain things that they may not necessarily be actioning, it's like, do you really want that?
Yeah. Like,
do you really want that? Or do you want like, based on your actions, like a life that feels more, isolated, more away from folks, less anxiety ridden, right? Less scary, right?
Do you need time to like kind of tend the wounds maybe, exactly. And then you can go back,
right? Because I think that there's like a contradiction of being like, maybe like you're thinking like my spirit wants something, but like I think we have to ask ourselves, does it really? Because in the context, if I, I'm centering myself, and I hope people are okay with that, and get the guests.
Yeah, you're an expert.
Joyann
That's how you are.
Company. Whenever I'm thinking if there's something that I want, I know I really want it based on what I'm then going to do. right? So if there is that, look, I'm human, so there's going to be times as well where I'm like, I don't know if I'm really up for going to that particular event because there's going to be certain people there, and I think that
wow, that
really,
happens to you. I love how I'm like shocked.
of course, right? Where I'll be like, maybe I'm too tired to even get up the energy to shake some of these people's hands, or maybe I'm going to ask myself, like, what are people going to be thinking about being there if they have some sort of like bias or judgments based on ethnocultural background or based on sexuality or whatever it is, right? Like you get into your head about those things, but then I say to myself, no, I really do want this outcome. And so I'm not going to let the inner saboteur or those things that are going on in my mind deter me from it. That is the saboteur's want. The saboteur's want is not me want. It's not Jason want. Maybe I'll give it, another name, right? It's like, that's like,
that's Zane.
That's
ruining
Zane.
things.
Ruining things. Zane, right? Like, give it a name and be like,
Zane.
that's Zane. Zane wants me to actually stay in bed all day because Zane wants to be antisocial, or Zane wants to, take the easy way, or Zane wants to, wallow in, the fact that right now, things, aren't necessarily opening up after I made that effort last week or whatnot. And that's fine and that's true. But then I think that if the want is still something that Jason wants or Joyann wants, then it has to be that conversation of, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go. And I'm going to allow myself to experience what it can actually end up being in reality, as opposed to what I told myself it was going to be. Because oftentimes you get up and you start and you're kind of like, hey, that actually is working out more than I thought. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So here's another thing that I find that, oh gosh, people like myself who have like some of the similar struggles that I have.
Okay.
And now I'm not like, God bless, I don't think my former students had these struggles. Well, maybe the ones with the ADHD and things like that had these struggles. But for me, I noticed that what happens is that when I do finally get the courage to write the to-do list, then when I'm actioning it, what will happen is sometimes I just overwhelmed myself and I don't know how to pare it down, because this is now the number one thing my friends have said to me, like good friends that you know of as well too, who will always be like, okay, Joyann, like you just mentioned 5 things, choose one. And I'm there like, one? But I need to, oh my goodness. And literally it's one of those things where I've if we were to be able to aggregate all the times that I didn't get out of bed, it would be like a year, you know what I mean? So my brain is always going, I have to make up for lost time. I can't just choose one thing because I have to make up for like the 90 days that I did nothing. Like, oh my goodness, I'm behind. Oh my goodness, I'm behind. And then guess what happens after that? Overwhelm again, burnout again, and 90 more days of inaction. So when you're making your to-do list and you've woken up at 5 a.m., and you've given yourself 15 minutes to clean, and you've done 30 minutes of different tasks, and you somehow have fit in going to the gym because the body's also there, and then you've done this and you've eaten food and you've gone to work, and how do you make that list actionable? Like, how do you take that? I'm assuming that your brain doesn't do this horrible chatter and doesn't betray you like mine likes to do. How do you take that list and make it actionable and not be like, oh my goodness, I have to do 90 things or it's worthless? How do you do that?
Well, look, everyone's different, and so everyone has to have different things that cause them to be in action, right? So an example can be having accountability buddy, if I can be colloquial, or contact, that you actually say, I really do want to be in action. I think that it's going to be good for us to keep each other accountable. Yes. So even when people think about the gym, sometimes they might not necessarily have the motivation, but they'll have the motivation more if they know that there's someone that they're going to be working out with, or that person says, you're going to have to come because this is what we're accountable for to each other. And that might actually be in career ways as well, right? Someone that you know is going to be a part of the journey with you, so that you know that you're actually serving. Parents probably feel this all the time where they're just like, oh, I don't want to get up out of bed, but I'm accountable to this young person. So I'm going to find that energy and I'm going to get up and I'm going to start getting in action because
could you imagine if all our parents just decided when you were 7 years old?
Exactly.
I'm not doing it today.
That person needs to eat, so I'm going to get up and I'm going to feed them, right?
Feed yourself.
Yeah. Right. So that's one thing, like in terms of like finding that accountability piece. And then there's a lot of other things as well that people can do. So I mentioned the timers that people put on, etc. Sometimes you do have to be accountable for people that aren't necessarily the accountability contact, but someone that you're delivering something for. So I mentioned the child, but that might be like clients or people that are actually waiting for you to actually send something off to them. I find things like music to be something that people can put on for inspiration. So sometimes you actually just need something in the background that gets you in action. So when I mentioned the cleaning thing, if I'm not feeling like I have the energy, music that actually has like, some intensity, some beats to it, like dance music, etc., can kind of fire you up and get you like really in the mindset. And then there's other music that I'll put on if I need to actually focus. So whether it's like classical piano or neo soul or other things to have in the background that really gets me into a mindset of, okay, it's a lot of brain work to actually sit down and do this, but I'm feeling very mellowed. I'm feeling like I'm in a groove, and I feel like I'm going to be able to like take this with me on the journey of getting that work done. One thing that I often say to people is uh, procrastination is no match for pressure. So you sometimes have to apply the pressure. So, if you have a bill and there's a deadline and it's like, okay, this bill needs to be paid or the phone's going to be cut off, that's the pressure, right?
No phone.
Right?
That's
so the pressure is like, there's no phone. So I'm going to need to, find the money, pay for that to make sure that I'm actually going to continue to keep the phone. And so, if there are things that you're trying to do, sometimes you need to apply the pressure on your own. So, for example, with respect to my team, again, have my own company, have a team of 11 people. I'll apply pressure for all of us by actually committing a date to a particular activity.
Okay.
Right? So let's say we're running an event. I say right away, we got to figure out a date. We got to book a venue so that we actually can say the deposit went towards the venue. So we got an event to plan, right? So we are now locked in. There has been money put down. So sometimes people could be like, oh, well, let me think about all these things before I actually apply any of that pressure. No, sometimes you got to be like, what is the pressure piece I'm going to apply? And then there's no room for procrastination. Now it is on. So if I may, Joyann, with respect to this, Joyann and I were speaking, and Joyann's amazing. She woke everyone up in Antigua for 2 years. So broadcaster that actually has a footprint, not just here in Canada, but outside the country. And we were talking, and I was like, you should be doing a podcast. And the first thing that I said is, let's commit to a date and actually do it.
Yes, no, you're amazing at that.
So we literally decided together
because
on a
there's
date.
literally like 3 other people who were like, oh my God, we need to do a podcast. And they're like, when I'm free, which is always, and we have not done a podcast.
And we're doing it because I said, let's plan the date. And now that we have the date, we are locked in. And here we are, and we're doing it, and you are amazing, and it's going to continue to have like ripple effects, and it's going to grow. And that's why I said, I'm not a perfectionist in that I'm not going to actually start somewhere. Let's just start. Let's just do something.
Start. Oh my gosh. Oh, I want this brand of perfectionism where I'm like, it's going to be messy. It's not going to be perfect in the beginning, but I need to start. And then hopefully the end result, then I can tighten it up and tweak it and dot the I's and cross the T's and then make it perfect that way. All right, so let's see. How else can we help people have more of the successful Jason mindset? So we went from a wee little cute baby with all this hair. It was so cute. I saw this baby picture. I was like, oh my God. to eating baby food.
Yeah.
So, and then you kept some of those really amazing habits of journaling and writing to-do lists and actually actioning the to-do list and not getting overwhelmed. So for you, are you just able to look at your day and say to yourself, I will be able to do 5 tasks and not get overwhelmed and put too much on it? Is that what you're doing?
Yes and no. Every day is a day of, and this is for everyone, proactivity and reactivity, or proactive and reactive. So there are pieces of the day where, it's part of the plan, and I'm going to try to be proactive to get it done. And then things come up, right? And that is what life is all about. We're dealing with other people around us. We're dealing with all sorts of circumstances that can just randomly happen. And then you have to react. So, there are times where with respect to my to-do list, it's like, okay, well, that didn't happen. Didn't get that done, right? So now I'm going to have to think about this for another day. or something else that came up, it's like that's going to take up a lot of time, energy, and focus, but that it has to be priority. So I have to react to that. So I try to give myself some grace, right? And I think that's important as well. Sometimes people actually stop because they're like so hard on themselves. They're like, well, it didn't happen, or I didn't get it done, or it didn't work. And so why do I even bother? I'm just going to check out. Joyann's like, that's me.
I just got dragged. You saw it live here, folks.
Sometimes you're a host and you get dragged.
Yeah.
Unintentional drag.
Yeah, I was like, ooh, ooh, and I oop. Yeah, it was a very and I oop.
That was like a library read, and I didn't know that was.
Yeah, because I was like, oh, that's me. Like I have so many projects that I have just been like, well, you suck, leave it alone. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
But again, the grace is important. But you can't have so much grace that you just don't get back into it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So sometimes you have to look at something and say, well, maybe I need to actually calibrate. Maybe I need to actually bring other people into the conversation to help get it done. And so
accountability.
But not just accountability. I mean, where I'm going with this is there are times where you actually just need to partner to actually get it done, right? Like sometimes you just need to be like, why am I taking this on for myself when I know that there's probably other people that are interested in this as well? Maybe I should just open myself up and say, who's interested in this? Or maybe you just like do a little bit of an ideating session with yourself and be like, actually, there's 3 people that I identify just by thinking about it. Let me actually see if they might partner.
Now we delegate.
Yeah.
Now we reach
and
out.
At my firm, like, we, have certain ways that we partner with different other organizations, because I say to myself, why are we going to actually take this on our own when there are other people who are also interested? And then in some cases, there's different parts of the overall initiative that some other people or companies are far better at to take on than us. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, we're in action because we don't have to do everything. And sometimes the doing everything causes us to just be like, I'm done. Can't do it. I'm not even going to get started. Yeah.
So that was like that lovely cooperation makes it happen moment that we should have learned from Sesame Street way back when. Okay. So now we're like, we transitioned from like a little cute baby with lots of hair who like was like, during the summer I'm going to read these books, and then became like, a young handsome man who's like, I'm somehow going to be in high school, because teachers in acting schools and musical theater schools and dance schools will always tell you, you do one or the other. You can't be auditioning for shows and going to school. So I'm low-key just like so impressed that you were able. I thought you did Mamma Mia when you were older than high school. I didn't realize you did it in high school. So
I was 18 when I got into that show.
And in our day, we had OAC.
Some people are watching like,
what's OAC? Do they mean the OC? Is it Orange County? What? No, we're from Ontario, okay? We're from Toronto, Canada, all right? So, yeah. Anyways, so then you somehow managed to pivot from a high schooler who was in an incredible like Broadway production, and then you're in your 20s and you like created your own businesses, because there were 2. I remember there were 2, and then you learned, unfortunately, a hard unfortunate reality that just because you have integrity doesn't mean everybody that you work with will have that integrity. So you learned that the hard way.
Yeah.
So you somehow picked yourself back up after that and having to pay people out of your own pocket, which that would have decimated me. I would have been like, well, she's done. Girl, it would have been done. And then after that, so then did you go back to school at that point, or were you working?
Yeah, I did. So I actually... so after Mamma Mia, so I did that when I was 18 and finished it when I was 20. I went to the University of Toronto and did my honors BA there. And it was when I was done that I like opened up Upstate Productions. And then from there, like got into executive search, and then did my master's while working away at the firm that I was at before opening up my own again.
Oh my gosh. And then, so now we're going to get into like, you can deny, you can politely say, I do not wish to discuss such matters. A gentleman doesn't discuss such matters. Did you have to take out loans? Like, how did you start your own business that is now I hope is flourishing. How did you start that?
Yeah, I mean, and I'm happy to answer these things because I think it's important for people to know, right? And you're asking because people might want to do similar. So when I was in Mamma Mia, I still lived at home with family, and so I was not at that time paying towards like rent, mortgage, or anything of that nature, and so I was able to save, right? And
Beauty.
you know,
God bless traditional parents because listen, people out there who are not from traditional backgrounds where you don't leave the home, listen, Canadians, you need to get into it. You need to understand that that is why so many of us are in dire straits right now because we probably left the home and for some of us it was no doing of our own. We
right.
had to leave,
Yep.
whatever. But if you are a nice little traditional child who is like, well, my Canadian friends are leaving the home at 17. Don't listen to them. Nobody with them. See, nobody with them. If you have a loving family and you're safe to stay with them into your 30s, do so. Okay?
Yeah.
And save your money.
And save your money. That's the point.
Save
right?
your
Save
money.
your money. So, I mean, when I was in the show, I happened to be, in a show that was actually paying a certain amount to actually be able to save.
Well done.
It wasn't like I was working at a position that was like minimum wage or anything like that, which is often the case when people are
quite young.
Young, right? Mm-hmm. So I was able to, for 2 years, essentially save. And obviously there was spending in that time, but most of what we spend on is things like rent, mortgage. Like
those are like when people guilt you about partying, your partying, we hope, is nowhere near $2,200 monthly for rent.
Yeah, and for myself as well. Like I was never someone who really spent a lot on things like partying. So essentially, I was able to save quite a bit, and then that really helped with like being able to, when I went to school, pay towards it and not have to take out OSAPs or debts and things of that nature. Yeah. So on the schooling side, I didn't end up having to.
I'm still paying off student loans. Yikes!
Yeah. Everyone's journey is different that way, I guess. Yeah, but then I started to. Then I did my own company, right? Like I mentioned, and then I did incur debts based on the conversation that I had. I went from not really having, and then with that situation that happened, paying people and not getting the money from the client, I did experience a lot of debt. And when I decided to open myself up to working for another company, that's when I started to kind of save and put money towards the debts that were incurred. And then I ended up getting into real estate at a very young age. So I was 26 when I got my first condo. And that was when, there was like global recession happening around that 2008 crash. And so I was able to just put some funds together to get into the market. And then that's like what kind of started to turn things again. So then I started to invest in real estate. And I was always comfortable with going into, I would say, like safe debt, right?
Yes.
So debt that would actually say, okay, the equity is going to build up here. And so therefore, even though I'm going into certain debts right now, I'm going to be able to recover that money later on. Mm-hmm. So I actually experienced, I would say, a good fare of my adulthood actually with some debts.
Which, when you first told me this, like, I don't know, I didn't want it to be misery loves company, but you made me feel less, you and another friend of mine have made me feel less ashamed of my mistakes, where I think if you can be so bold, but I think you do understand that I unfortunately beat myself up a little bit too drastically over my mistakes, where I'm just like, shame, self-flagellation, and in so doing, it's what takes me the 90 days to get out of bed, because I'm just like, oh, I'm so ashamed of all the bad mistakes and my debt, and I did this wrong, And matter of factly, when we were driving back from the cottage, you were like, Joyann, I'm in debt. And I was like, what? No. What? No, you can't be. You're amazing. Look at this home. Like, oh, you accomplished so much. You're a good person. Like, literally my brain does this weird, stupid spiral that anything that's wrong with me is only people like me have this horrible hump.
No.
But someone
No.
like you also has dealt with this.
And also too, it's just like, the bigger you swing, sometimes the more risks you're taking in terms of, the whole financial conversation. And so, I, have a couple properties and I have a business and, I have employees that have to be paid and, there can be debts that come with that to just keep even a business alive. And this past year has been absolutely brutal. Like,
Oish.
I mean, this is another podcast. It's
Yeah.
just been so brutal. And so there are not so rosy pictures to keep the company going. Knowing that there will be better days and trying to bridge this bad period to get to those better days.
Yeah.
And what that means is sometimes going into even more debt in order to keep the business going, hoping that it does get to that point.
Pay off.
So yeah, I actually have right now like certain things that I'm like, these are debts that I consider like healthy debts, investment debts.
How did you? So this was another question I wanted to ask. How did you know all this? Like, who taught you finance and who taught you about real estate? Like, because think about this. Like, that's incredible. At 26, you were like, I need to get into the real estate game. What? And so many of us at 26 were just struggling to pay our rent, and you were like, no, I need to invest. Who taught you that?
Well, this is like when I go back to not being a perfectionist during the process and just saying, maybe I know I want this for an outcome at some point, but I need to just expose myself to different people who have different information. So a lot of what I can say I have right now is just that. I'm constantly sitting down and listening to people and showing up saying I want to work together collaboratively, but there are things that I don't know that I'm going to rely on you for. And people will gravitate towards working with individuals if they feel like they're going to trust you to do your part. So in the conversation, the real estate agent that I still work with, love her, Joyann actually knows who she is. I remember sitting down with her over brunch. I have someone that we know mutually that introduced me to her. And then when I sat down with her, I was an open book, right? I shared with her, these are some things that I want to actually achieve where real estate is concerned. Here's what I currently have. And what does that mean in terms of what I can actually do? So I was just open. I was just like going to be an open book and I'm just going to sit back and I'm going to take notes and be like, tell me from your professional perspective, what can I do? And she did. She was like, based on your situation, this is what you can do. And this is how I can help. Do you want to try for this? And I was like, yeah, let's try for it. And literally the following week, literally 1 week later, we started to shop for places. I saw 3 places on that Saturday and I bid on one of those 3. So literally met with her for brunch. A week later, we went shopping and I bid on a place and I had no idea what I was doing other than I knew I was going to work really, really hard. And the thing about that particular transaction is that when it was supposed to close, so like, let's say like probably about like 3 days before I was going to close, God, just thinking about this story, I just get like shivers thinking about how to work out.
Hello.
So the financing from the bank that I was supposed to be getting this mortgage from, they pretty much said, they're not financing this. And I was like, I have to close in 3 days. What are you talking about? You're not gonna So this is me at 26, not knowing very much about all of this. And then my realtor put me in touch with another person, like a broker. I had a conversation with the broker and she told me exactly what I needed to do in order to make this happen. And she essentially said, one of the things you're going to have to do is you're going to have to get a guarantor. And so I went to my mom, and my mom is not someone who made a lot of money during her career. I won't say how much she was making, but it was very modest, like extremely modest.
She was just a good traditional woman who saved her pennies.
Good traditional woman, right? Just like working in like the hospitality type of industry, so not making that much at all. She on her side, like doesn't have like any debts or anything like that. So just in terms of what it would look like by adding her to the whole overall picture, even though there wasn't much income, at least she didn't have like liabilities, right? So I remember distinctively that evening going over to my parents' place in Mississauga, God rest my dad's soul, who's no longer with us. And I remember having to not tell my dad, because my mom was like, he cannot know that I'm helping you with this. And so she put her information on the application. And then the next day I'm sending that all to the broker and praying that this more, because I'm thinking about the selling individuals. I still remember the situation. They had a newborn, they needed to get a bigger space, so they had to move out of this condo to get a home, but they were relying on the funds going into their bank account so they can actually then put it towards their next place. Anyway, it all worked out and it was down to the wire. And that's what I mean. Like the big risk. Sometimes it doesn't work out, but if you work hard, the goal is to figure out a path. And ever since then, I mean, I have other stories about real estate where it's actually very similar, where it's kind of like, I mean, I remember getting the house that I currently have.
I thought this story was the house.
No, that was a condo that I had at Young.
So the condo was first.
Condo first at Young and King, and then I needed to.
I don't think I remember this condo.
Yeah. Actually, no, you do. You were there. Yeah, remember there was a birthday celebration that I had.
Oh my
there.
gosh!
And we had like a.
Oh, the photo shoot.
Yeah.
Okay, I was at this condo.
She was at the condo. Yeah. I love it. And then so then I ended up getting into a house situation, and it was very similar in terms of how things just like miraculously worked, because the risk there was I had to sell the condo first so that the banks can see there was a sale before actually getting the next place.
Like
so
having like collateral or something.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So there was a house that I wanted to bid on. And was in a relationship with someone at the time. We still own the house together, and Joyann knows this person, and this person actually works at my firm right now. So we're really close still. So we wanted to get this house, and we had to sell this condo because they moved into the condo and bought into it a few years into me having it. So we had to sell our condo, be able to show the bank that we actually had the condo sold before we would be able to even bid on the house. So you have to recognize we pretty much are going to be like homeless if we didn't actually get the house, because we sold our condo. We're like, we don't have a place to live effective like 30 days from now, essentially. We'd find another place, but we're like, did we just risk like having this condo to try to buy the house? And then luckily when the bidding happened, our realtor, super incredible and strategic. We ended up getting it, and then we're like, thank God we actually have this place to live. But that was a big risk to be like, we're going to sell our place just to show we have the finances to buy it.
Amazing.
And that's been the whole trajectory, like swing big, and sometimes it works out.
Yeah, these calculated risks that are risks, but you have been smart enough to get, advice from really trusted, sources. And I think we also need to remember that you delegate. You're not trying to do it all on your own or by yourself, and that you are getting, that feedback from people who would know more than you. And God bless, having, hardworking, people who can also help you, and you yourself also being hardworking. So again, there's so much here. This is a gold mine. This is a platinum mine, darling. This is diamonds as well. There's so much to learn here. So I think to sum up, essentially there is a lot of work, where people are like, oh, if you want to have that big success, you do have to put the work in. But I just love how, again, it's just like these little tweaks that I wish I was more aware of, and that I could stop kicking myself for not doing. But then I understand why I don't do them, because I get, tripped up on some of the other little smaller steps. Because that is, oh my gosh, well done. Okay.
And one's temperament for swinging big, right? I think that it's important for people to ask themselves, what do I have to do to be comfortable to do that? Right? Because a number of individuals may think, these are the types of things that I want, but am I prepared to take a big, bold risk? And if you're not, my advice would be to try to figure out how to network with people who are.
Yes.
So that when you are around that, you start to feel more comfortable, because you see maybe how they've been able to do it successfully. People often say the network that you keep can actually determine a lot of what's going to end up happening. And it doesn't have to be a super extensive network, but maybe there's like a few key people that you're
Yes.
like, let me actually see if I can align with them on a couple of different projects.
Oh my goodness. Like my brain is like firing. This is like so inspiring for me because now I'm just really thinking, I'm like, okay, objectively speaking, I like you said, like I said, you were impressed with my students, and now I'm just thinking to myself, the number one thing that they like, God bless them, the number one thing that they would do is resist me on the networking, where they just didn't want to ask people. They were like, oh, teacher, I can't bother people. And now when I think about myself, the number one thing I do too is like when I was going through my worst times in life was that I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to embarrass myself. I didn't want to share my shame with people. I was like, well, I couldn't possibly ask. I can't talk about this. And now I'm like, wow. All that time, the advice that I'm giving to people, I'm like, you need to network. You need to ask people. You need to go and talk to people. It's the advice I need. So when I say that to somebody, I need to point it threefold at myself. Like, that's the stuff I need to be doing. You know what I mean? So again, all things made clear thanks to Jason. I'm like, oh, so this is what I should have been doing. I should have been like, can I just ask you questions and like finally have the answers I've been searching for my entire life?
But I'll also say though, Joyann, like, you know, when people do that, they have to do that in a way that makes the other individual feel like like you're inspiring confidence, right? So as you're networking with people, you really have to believe in whatever it is you're talking to them about if you want them to actually participate and be a part of helping you with whatever that is.
Yeah.
Or like you can't come across like you're uncertain, you're unsure,
True.
you're unworthy. So you have to just, you know, put on a character if you have to do like sort of the fake it till you make it.
The fake it till you make it.
Fake it till you make it. But then also too,
and also not get so discouraged.
Don't get so discouraged, but then also don't resist the support. Because there are other times where support might show up and someone might be like, I believe in you. And you're kind of like demonstrating, do I really believe in myself?
Yeah,
right?
I'm
It's
not
just
ready.
like, I'm not ready. And it's like, how many times are people going to come back to the table and say they believe in you or they want to support or they want to actually be there for you or why don't you try this or did you think about that? Giving ideas. You know, if you're not really going to participate and volley with them, you might be losing out on a precious opportunity to see some of your aspirations come alive. And there are a lot of people who, you know, they have people around them that are giving them advice or they're trying to encourage them or not, and they're just going into their shell thinking, oh, I feel like I'm exposed because this person's giving me advice and essentially pointing towards where I'm going wrong. Don't think of it that way. Just think, I have a network that actually cares. Yeah.
Again, the gold mine, the platinum mine, the advice and the anecdotes and stories and, you know, nuggets of knowledge and wisdom that are worth that. So I really hope that kind of like, at the very least, inspires people. I mean, I'm inspired to try and be like, okay, Joyann, go back to go back to the drawing board. And first thing is, when you wake up that early, because I do now, get out of bed, make those lists, and don't overwhelm yourself, and then understand that the beginning is going to be rocky, it's going to be messy, but then we can tweak and finalize the outcome. And that's when our perfectionism can come out. And then also ask those, because you did also introduce me to other experts that are incredible, and that was really very helpful for me too. So asking him again for that information. All right, perfect, we got it. We got it. It's a wrap. like, you know, when people do that, I love it. All right, perfect. So again, that was myself, Joyann, you know, someone who has, if I think about my soft skills, have always been the chit chat and would like to make sure that I pivot this into media and broadcast and, you know, being a presenter extraordinaire, darling. And thanks to my fantastic company, I do, you know what, you're known by the company you keep. My mom would always like, rest in peace, my mom would kind of like haunt me with that, where she's like, you're known by the company you keep. Like, I don't want you to hang out with these little raggedy friends you have. Mommy, don't worry, rest in peace, I have great friends. Look at the handsome, look at it. All right, and that was Jason, my company for the day. This has been Joyann Co. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Yay! Rockstar you.